According to the suppressed pages of the Book of Enoch, the glowing shape you see in the night sky is not solid all the way through. What we call the moon is a shell, and something is stationed inside it. Modern institutions describe a barren satellite, dead rock pocked with impact craters. Nothing behind the surface but more rock. But the ancient patriarch Enoch was taken past that surface by the archangel Uriel and shown an interior no textbook accounts for. A chamber where light is stored rather than simply reflected. A system of gates guarded by named commanders. An oath inscribed into the walls. A holding cell for entities bound since before the flood. And at the center of all of it, a blueprint for something still waiting to happen. This isn't mythology. It's a floor plan the church spent centuries trying to erase. And once you know what each room does, you won't be able to look at a full moon or a new moon the same way again. To understand why anyone would go to that much trouble to hide the inside of the moon, you have to go back to 1947, to the Judean desert, where a shepherd boy broke open a clay jar and exposed a cache of scrolls that had been sealed in a cave above Qumran for close to 2,000 years. Among the fragments recovered from Cave 4, catalogued by scholars as 4Q208 and 4Q209, archaeologists found something that didn't read like religious poetry or moral instruction. They found a mathematical astronomical record, precise enough to stun 20th century researchers who expected nothing more sophisticated than shepherd folklore. These fragments are what biblical scholars now call the Astronomical Book of Enoch, chapters 72 through 82 of the wider Enochic text. A standard 66-book Protestant Bible contains none of this. Even the Catholic Apocrypha leaves it out entirely. Only the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, the single Christian body that successfully protected the full 81-book canon from Roman imperial editing, still preserves the complete account, and what it preserves reads less like theology and more like a technical manual for something built to run on schedule. The removal wasn't incidental. During the 4th century, as the institutional church consolidated authority under Rome, theological councils began trimming the sacred texts down to a version they could fully control. A scripture describing a mechanical, governed cosmos, with an interior, with contents, with a schedule anyone could in theory check for themselves, doesn't leave much room for an institution that wants to be the sole authority standing between ordinary people and the divine. So the question worth sitting with before we go any further is simple. Why would anyone need to hide what's specifically inside the moon? If banned scripture and the parts of church history nobody covers in Sunday school are why you're here, subscribe now, because we're about to go past the surface most channels stop at. Chapter 75 and the surrounding material describe Enoch standing beside Uriel as the moon completes its 30th morning descent into total darkness. And what Uriel shows him breaks completely from the picture most people carry around without questioning it. The moon's light isn't simply blocked or turned away as it fades. It's withdrawn. Enoch watches it retreat inward, drawn back through hidden openings into an interior vault, where angelic attendants measure and catalog every fraction of illumination before it's released again. The moon isn't losing light on its dark nights. It's storing it. The text describes this vault in terms closer to an operating system than a poetic image, a celestial capacitor built to capture, hold, and dispense cosmic energy in exact sync with the divine calendar. Every dark night isn't an absence, it's a bank statement. But a chamber that stores something on this scale doesn't operate in isolation, and chapter 74 makes that clear immediately. The moon doesn't drift through the sky on its own momentum. It moves through a fixed system of 12 architectural gates, 6 along the eastern horizon where the luminaries rise, 6 along the west where they set. Uriel walks Enoch to the edge of the earth, where the dome of the heavens meets the ground, and shows him the gates directly, structures with windows to the right and left releasing currents of wind that push the celestial chariot along its track. Picture a train station built into the horizon itself. The lunar chariot is directed into Gate 1 for a fixed number of days, then shifted into Gate 2, then Gate 3, moving through a scheduled progression instead of drifting freely. And inside those same gates, the text places the physical control mechanisms that enforce the 14-part cycle, the same cycle governing the chamber where the light is stored. the vault and the gate system, are not two separate structures. They're one machine. To the Qumran community that preserved these fragments, this wasn't poetic flourish. It was infrastructure. The gates are described with the same specificity you'd expect from an engineer, not a mystic. Fixed positions, fixed durations, fixed handoffs from one gate to the next, with the moon's motion locked to the sun's motion at every stage of the sequence. Researchers who have studied the Aramaic terminology describe an internally consistent system for tracking celestial movement across the horizon, coherent enough that later astronomers could, in theory, reconstruct the whole schedule from the fragments alone. That's not the kind of detail a shepherd invents while staring at the sky. It's the kind of detail someone records while reading instructions. A machine this precise doesn't run itself, and this is where the text gets specific about who's actually stationed inside it. As Enoch watches the lunar chariot pass between these gates, Uriel reveals that it doesn't travel unaccompanied. Leaders of the stars, named commanders assigned specifically to guard these pathways, are stationed at every gate, enforcing the boundaries of what the text calls the lesser light. Enoch doesn't describe empty corridors inside the chamber. He describes a command post, staffed, monitored, actively run. One of these commanders turns to Enoch directly, and in a line scholars have translated multiple ways, but never softened, tells him plainly that this chamber is the nerve center of lunar operations, that not a single day is permitted to be added or subtracted from its appointed course. The moon isn't a passive object catching sunlight. It's a guarded post in an active conflict between cosmic order and the corruption unleashed on Earth by the fallen watchers. Every night it rises, it's executing a function someone is actively enforcing. Enoch doesn't just glimpse this command post in passing. He's walked through it, the way a visiting official might be walked through an active facility, past attendants still mid-task, past commanders who don't pause their work to acknowledge him. Nothing about the description reads like a shrine. It reads like a functioning operations floor, running on a schedule that predates Enoch's arrival and will keep running long after he leaves. A post guarded this carefully is enforcing a law, and the text names that law directly. Across the astronomical book, Enoch repeats a phrase that most translations soften into background poetry, the oath by which the luminaries are bound together. It isn't decoration. When Uriel brings Enoch into the deeper part of the chamber, past the stored light and past the command posts, he doesn't show him more machinery. He shows him an inscription, covering the interior walls, written not in ink, but in light itself. This is the oath, the binding agreement that keeps the sun and moon from adding to or subtracting from their appointed course, and every completed 14-part cycle is, in effect, the moon fulfilling the terms of that oath in real time. The chamber isn't only a battery and a command center. It's an archive, holding the record of every cycle completed since the Earth was formed, witnessed and logged by the same commanders stationed at the gates. What began as a description of stored light has turned into something closer to a legal document, written into the architecture of the sky, and enforced nightly without exception. Enoch is shown that this archive doesn't just record the moon's own compliance, it cross-references it. Every completed cycle is checked against the sun's parallel oath, the two luminaries verifying each other's course, the way two witnesses might co-sign the same document, century after century, without either one ever missing a signature. A covenant this old, this carefully enforced, exists to hold something back, and this is where the chamber turns from administrative to punitive. When the 200 rebellious watchers descended and corrupted the earth, Scripture records that God did not simply destroy their leaders. He ordered the archangels Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel to bind them and cast them into prisons to await final judgment. Azazel, one of their leaders, was buried under sharp rocks in the desert of Dudael, an earthbound half of a much larger containment system. The astronomical chapters hint at the celestial half of that same system, and the deeper layers of Enochic tradition place it directly inside this chamber. Not a holding cell built from iron or stone, but one built from cosmic law itself, bound entities held in place by the same oath inscribed on the walls, the same 14-part cycle counted out night after night. That cycle isn't only a battery rhythm or a legal record anymore. For whatever is bound inside that chamber, It's a countdown, a nightly reminder that their confinement is measured, finite, and being tracked in real time by the very machinery they once tried to corrupt. Enoch describes standing near this part of the chamber and feeling something he doesn't fully put into words. Not fear exactly, but the specific unease of standing close to something that is being contained rather than simply stored. Uriel doesn't linger here. He moves Enoch forward quickly, the way a guide might hurry a visitor past a section of a facility that isn't the point of the tour, toward the one chamber that is. But a countdown, by definition, ends somewhere, and the final layer of the chamber is where the text finally answers what all of this has been building toward. Past the stored light, past the guarded gates, past the archive and the holding cell, Enoch is shown one more thing, and it isn't bound or stored or guarded. It's built, a model of the entire cosmos. Rendered with a precision Enoch has no ordinary language to describe, showing the shape of what comes after judgment. This is the blueprint for the restoration of the ancient 364-day order, the system where every festival, every season, every appointed day returns permanently to its fixed place in the calendar, with nothing lost and nothing drifting. Uriel tells Enoch that the moon's 14-part cycle, the same cycle running the battery, staffing the gates, logging the oath, and counting down the sentence, is simultaneously executing this older, larger purpose, declaring, every single night, that time itself remains under the authority of the Most High. The chamber inside the moon, taken as a whole, is a battery, a station, a command post, an archive, and a prison, and at its exact center sits the design for the moment when all 5 of those functions are finally released at once, and the corrupted timeline, currently governing the Earth, is replaced with the one that was never supposed to be lost in the first place. Uriel doesn't tell Enoch when that release happens. He tells him only that the model exists, fully built, fully finished, waiting inside the one part of the chamber that isn't measuring a sentence or storing a debt. It's holding a completed plan for the day the rest of the chamber finally empties out. None of this was hidden because it was false. It was hidden because it was checkable. An institution built on being the sole mediator between ordinary people and the divine cannot tolerate a scripture that puts a working, dated, mechanical structure directly overhead, visible to anyone willing to look up and count the nights for themselves. Removing the astronomical book from the canon didn't just erase a set of chapters. It severed the general public from a system that was never meant to require an institution's permission to understand. The 4th century councils that trimmed Enoch out of Scripture weren't reacting to heresy. They were reacting to a manual. Next time you walk outside and look up at the moon, don't see the sterilized version you were handed by a textbook. You aren't looking at a dead sphere of rock and dust drifting on inertia. You're looking at the outer shell of a chamber that stores light like currency, runs a guarded rail system through 12 gates, holds an oath written into its own walls, contains a sentence being served in real time, and carries, buried at its center, the design for a restoration that hasn't happened yet but has never stopped being scheduled. The Book of Enoch wasn't suppressed because it lied about what's up there. It was suppressed because it told you exactly what to look for, and exactly how to check it yourself. And the moon isn't the only place Enoch was taken to look at what institutions have spent centuries keeping hidden. If this changed the way you'll look at the sky tonight, you need to see where Uriel took him next, in the exact opposite direction, into a suppressed chapter describing a hidden world with people living inside it right now, complete with the exact physical map showing the way in. That video is waiting for you. Click it, and let's keep going.